So let me ask you, do you know what the difference is between a resume and a CV? Or maybe you're thinking about using a CV when you apply for a specific position out there because everybody else is submitting resumes and you want to get one leg up on the competitions, be able to maybe get called in for that interview because you're doing something a little bit different. My name is Bill Benoist. I'm a certified professional career coach here in Silicon Valley, and in today's video I'm going to take the mystery out of the CV. What it is, when to use it, and how it's prepared. So one of the first things that I want you to understand is this, and that is, if you don't know what a CV is, or if you're having trouble in explaining it to somebody else, you're not alone. According to a recent survey that I read, 8 out of 10 people cannot really explain what a CV is. I think the only people that really know what a CV is are the ones that are really going to need it. So that could be a clue right there that if you don't know what it is, you're probably not going to need it. But stay with me for a little bit here. So at least I can educate you so you be one of the 2 out of 10 that can explain what a CV is. So first off is that a CV is something that validates your credentials. You've probably heard me talk about this before with resumes. Your resume validates your competence, but the CV is something that validates your credentials, your qualifications out there, what makes you a good candidate for this. Another point, very important point of the CV is it's going to be longer than the resume, sometimes a lot longer. So the typical resume should be no more than 2 pages. And maybe 3 pages if you're at the C-level executive, but even with C-level executives, been able to usually get that down to 2 pages. But with a CV, it could go all the way up to 12 pages. I mean, 3 is probably the minimum, and it goes up from there. I remember the first CV that I ever saw, I think it was 7 pages or 8 pages long. I mean, it was like, wow, there's a lot of information on here. So what is typically on a CV? You may be wondering. Well, like a resume, it's going to start off with your personal information, your name, the city, state that you live in, a phone number, email address. Some countries outside the US will actually even want a date of birth and your marital status and a few other things that are very, very personal that you would never be putting on a resume. In fact, even a CV that is asked for here in the United States is not going to have that. But don't be surprised if it's being asked if you're applying for a position outside the country and you're having to submit a CV. They may be looking for that. But anyway, going on. So you're going to have your personal information. And then you'll have the professional summary, very similar to what would be on your resume. But then what comes next is something a little bit different. You're going to have your education up at the top. Now, typically with a resume, unless you're fresh out of college, 1 or 2 years, your education is going to be at the bottom of the resume. And you're going to start directly with work experience. But with the CV, your education is going to come and then your work experience will be there. It's going to be just like the resume in a chronological order, but then this is where things start separating. Remember what I said, your CV is what's going to validate your credentials. So let me give you some items that you will find on a CV that you probably are not going to find on the resume. Graduate, field work, study abroad, any of this information, dissertations, theses, you have links to these, your research experience, your teaching experience, publications, any presentations, lectures, and exhibitions that you have been involved in, any grants, scholarships, fellowships, awards and honors, language skills, and professional licenses, certifications, and memberships. Unlike a resume where you may have some of these things on there and you just have them in bullet point format, you're actually kind of putting a little bit more information. So for example, the association that you belong to, you might have an entire paragraph explaining what that association is, or the certification there. So this is the kind of information that makes a CV a lot longer, more in length than a typical resume. So by now, by reading that off, you probably have a good idea as to what kind of industries or positions that you're going to be using a CV for. And those positions are going to, big one, academia. And I'm not talking about an elementary school teacher. I'm talking about a professor of economics or a department head of psychology. Your top universities and colleges, they're going to be requiring a CV. Your medical profession, again, I'm not talking about medical assistants or nurses. I'm talking about doctors out there, doctors of internal medicine, dermatologists, brain surgeons. These are going to be the individuals that will be using CVs. And then finally, people in scientific research, those kind of things there. This is where your credentials become more important than your competence. And probably because the more credentials you have, the more confident you become. That I don't know about. I'll be honest with you, I do not really deal with individuals that require or need a CV. Very few of them. In fact, I had a discovery call just today, earlier this morning, with someone who was needing, although we didn't really talk about it, I think he already had one, but he was someone that would have needed a CV with where he was going. I think he was in medical school or something. He was looking, his big thing was on interviewing. But this is where you need a CV. Let me answer this one last question. Well, what if I use a CV for a project manager position or an IT department position? Is that going to help me? Is that going to make me stand out from the crowd? No. In a short answer, no. And here's the reason why. Keep in mind, study that was done by Glassdoor in 2017, an average of 250 resumes are being received for every one of those kinds of positions. And the recruiter will only spend about 6-7 seconds on a resume. They're scanning it, they're not reading it. If anything, if you had a CV, all of the important stuff in that would be lost in all those pages and the words, and it could actually hurt you. Because if somebody has 250 resumes on their desk and they come across one that's 8 pages long, they're not going to take the time to read it. When they have 249 other resumes, they're going to just put it in the no pile and move on. So don't hurt yourself by thinking that you need a CV. But even the bigger question here, and something I want to just get back to, and that is, if you were one of the 8 out of 10 people before watching this video that you did not know what a CV is or could not really explain it, then likely you didn't need to know what a CV is, because I think the only people that really understand what they need when it comes to a CV are the ones that are in the medical profession, or those individuals that are in universities, department heads and college professors and stuff like that.